Breaking news. We have new video from Camron Guthrie, the brother of Savannah Guthrie, with a plea to whomever has their mother, Nancy.
This is Camron Guthrie. I'm speaking for the Guthrie family. Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you. We haven't heard anything directly. We need you to reach out, and we need a way to communicate with you so we can move forward. But first, we have to know that you have our mom. We want to talk to you, and we are waiting for contact.
And that is Savannah's brother, Camron Guthrie. He is a former Air Force pilot. He served 26 years with the Vermont Air National Guard. He retired from the Air Force 7 years ago. This is the first time that we have heard from him. We have new details from law enforcement about the potential ransom note, but there are still no suspects. CBS correspondent Jonathan Vigliotti has the latest.
Disturbing new details about the ransom note. The FBI confirmed there were 2 deadlines and say they are taking the note seriously.
Did make a demand for 5 p.m. today, and if a transfer wasn't made, then I think a second demand was for next Monday.
It's unclear what the exact terms of the deadlines are. We pressed officials about its authenticity.
But not everyone is presented to the family. Why this one?
Because this was the ransom that came in, and it had facts associated with a deadline, with a monetary value they were asking for.
And so what were some of those facts, if you can, because there's been a lot of speculation, as you know, if you could set the record straight.
Yeah, the ransom itself, one talked about an Apple Watch, and one talked about a floodlight.
The sheriff released an updated timeline showing that Nancy Guthrie arrived home Saturday night at 9:48 p.m. The garage door closing 2 minutes later. At 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera disconnects. At 2:12 a.m., software detects movement, but it wasn't recorded. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker disconnects from her phone. At 11:56 a.m., the family checks on Nancy. There is now growing desperation and mounting heartbreak.
Mommy, if you are hearing this, you are a strong woman.
Last night, Savannah Guthrie, her sister Annie, and brother Camron responded to the ransom note, making a gut-wrenching plea.
We need to know, without a doubt, that she is alive and that you have her.
Authorities now say that DNA has revealed that bloodstains found outside the home belong to Guthrie. Potentially hampering investigators, Nancy Guthrie's home is in a hilly and rugged community with homes nestled well away from main streets. The isolation is clearly visible. Home security cameras from neighbors may not be able to see movement. Clues and suspects could vanish undetected. The sheriff says investigators continue to canvass the area looking for additional leads.
Everyone is looking for you, Mommy, everywhere. We will not rest. Your children will not rest until we are together again.
Jonathan Vigliotti, CBS News, Tucson, Arizona.
Former FBI Special Agent Jeff Harp joining me now live to talk more about this. Jeff, the family clearly trying to establish a line of communication with whoever took Nancy Guthrie. What might investigators and negotiators be doing right now to try to open up that conversation?
Well, first of all, this heart-wrenching case, like every single kidnapping, it just, jerks at everybody's heartstrings. I know that I've actually talked to some of the investigators, and I've talked to other folks that have been involved in this sort of thing. And right now they are dissecting absolutely every piece of forensic, digital forensics, physical forensics that they have to try to come up with a possible suspect in the case. I know that negotiators doing everything they can to validate probably these ransom notes, and we obviously saw the person that asked for the Bitcoin has been arrested in LA. So there's a lot of hoaxes out there, and these are the things that they're going to have to try to overcome. I think one of the really sort of interesting things that when I first saw this was how quickly they released that crime scene. And obviously they've gone back and resecured it, because there are very, very small bits of information and evidence that they can collect, but you have to maintain a very sterile crime scene in order to do that.
Yes, and the crime scene's been opened up again. The tape has been taken down. We know that there is a strategy behind these statements. We're hearing from the Guthrie family. We've heard from Savannah. We've heard from her sister and now her brother. Listening to that video from Camron today, what stands out to you about the message that he sends and the family sends, and maybe what hostage negotiators are trying to send?
They need contact with somebody. I think that's the biggest thing that needs to happen here. Any of the cases that I was ever involved in, whether there were hostages or the negotiators were around, there has to be some line of communication. And right now, we don't really have anything. And once they get that line of communication established, they can at least start to go down the road of, proof of life or something that at least shows that her mother is still alive and well. And I think that's the biggest concern right now. Is she safe? Is she alive and well?
So right now, tonight, we've heard from the family twice. Yesterday from Savannah, today a new message. What's happening in the hours leading into the night and into the weekend? What are investigators doing? What should the family be doing? Kind of give us a glimpse into that sort of thing.
There's going to be no stone unturned, and they're going to go back through the evidence, everything that they've already looked at. There's also some very sophisticated cellular technology that the FBI can use to sort of pinpoint people that were in the area. But without giving away, everything that happens, they certainly will look at a lot of cell phone data, and then they can start narrowing down who is in the area. But it doesn't mean that somebody that was there didn't put their phone in airplane mode or didn't turn their phone off, so it's not pinging on a cell tower. These people are not stupid, and it's just obvious to me. This is not a random situation. They either had been to the house several times. They knew this person. They knew the family. They knew sort of the layout of the house. They knew there was a Ring camera there. So I think once we start narrowing this down, you will know more information. I think the sheriff there, obviously, they have more information than they're telling us. That's SOP. They don't release everything. They just can't.
Yeah, and quite clearly those messages were vetted and every single word had its own purpose and message to whomever's out there. Before we go, I wanted to ask you about those cameras, because in this age of technology, you would think that we'd be able to recall some of that video. And we're learning that she didn't have a subscription. Note to self, to anyone who has an older parent now, I mean, I thought that would be kind of out there in the cloud, and apparently it is not.
No, I mean, obviously you have to keep up the subscription. I tell people, I do this for a living, and I tell people, hey, you've got to make sure your credit card doesn't expire, because simple things like that will cancel the subscription. And, all that information, once you're subscribed, is stored up in the cloud. And the services are relatively cheap. And for what you get out of it, it's very significant that you keep that up to date.
All right, Jeff Harp, appreciate your insight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Sure thing.
We're joined now by former FBI agent Katherine Schweit, who remarkably has experience on similar kidnapping cases and can help us with some insight into what we learned today. Kate, thank you very much for joining us right now. This first bit of information that I found remarkable was in the potential ransom note. There are two deadlines, one for later tonight, another for Monday if tonight's is not met. What do you make of that?
It could be something as simple as just deadlines on and limits on accounts, cryptocurrency, or funds being moved. There might be limits, or there might be concerns that if this amount is transferred, or somebody might not have the ability to move that amount. It might be coming from different accounts. So I think we don't know for sure, because this is an unusual request.
It is an unusual request, and it's such an unusual case because it was clear today at the press conference that authorities don't feel they have proof of life. And then in the emotional video from the Guthrie family, they were asking the potential abductor to demonstrate that they have their mom and that she is okay. How does this normally work? Is it unusual for this to be so vague?
It is, and that's part of the struggle, right? You're working with a one-way communication here, and the family needs proof of life. They need to know that this person is still alive, because there are people who will commit fraud and simply ask for money, and then you transfer money to someplace, and it goes and that person disappears, and you have nothing, no indication that you have your person yet. So you need to know that you're really dealing with a person who has her and is willing to bring her home.
Kate, we also learned today a better sense of the time timeline early Sunday morning. There's a moment when the doorbell camera is disconnected, another moment when apparently somebody might have been there at the door. That's not confirmed. What do you make of that? Is there any lead there and anything that gives you hope that this could come to a peaceful resolution?
Yes, the timeline helps us to see, it helps law enforcement to match things. They might have information about a car that drove by. That timeline on the Ring camera disappearing might be relevant, right? That's how you connect those things together. And as far as hopefulness, let me tell you, I will say that the case that I worked maybe 23 years ago this very week, we had an 88-year-old woman who was kidnapped from her home in the middle of the night. And 5 days later, she was returned home to her family, healthy and alive.
We are hoping for that result here as well. Kate, thank you very much.
Chip Massey joins me now. He's a retired FBI hostage negotiator. Chip, before we get to the video, how unusual is it for the first deadline in a ransom note that law enforcement is taking seriously is fast approaching, and communication, to our knowledge, has not been made with any alleged captors?
Yeah, again, I think the key word there is not to our knowledge. We don't know what's transpired, between the family, law enforcement, and the kidnappers. But there's got to be something in place. There's something that is telling them, we have to read this statement. We want to communicate with the kidnappers. We want them to know that this is a loved person of our family.
I mean, this video is so heart-wrenching for everybody in this unimaginable situation. What did you pick up on from what they said, what they didn't see, what they didn't say, who they're talking to?
Yeah, it's a great point. What's key here is how Savannah starts that conversation, is that we're ready to talk. And she ends it by saying, we're ready to listen. And those are concepts that might have been brought out as a result of what the kidnappers were saying, either to them, to law enforcement, in notes, in telephonic contact. We don't know how that's transpiring. But it's an openness. It's saying, we are here. This is a loved member of our family, and we are desperate to get things moving so that we can have her back. And in between there, what you're hearing from her is that we also need proof of life. Obviously, that's so important for them to know that she's okay, that they're taking good care of her, because ultimately the kidnappers feel a sense of control here. And that's how you have to deal with them, because they are in charge of her well-being, of her safekeeping. Anything that detracts from that, they're also responsible for. So the family's saying, we are open, we're here, and we want to listen.
What is the goal of humanizing not only Nancy, but themselves?
Yeah. Can you imagine that Savannah, she has spent her life in front of a camera. So now she's given the task of having to plead for her mother's life. It's a whole different set of understanding, of mental anguish, of crisis. And that's really what crisis is. It's being able to regulate your emotion in a way that will bring about the best outcome. And that's what she has to do now. So it's all about putting behind her, what she desperately wants to do is get at these people, what the family around her is saying. We want our mother back. We want her in place again. You're preventing that, but she has to maintain a discipline. And the discipline is, please talk to us, reach out.
Chip Massey, we really appreciate your expertise. Thank you. If anyone has information about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, please call the Pima County Sheriff's Department tip line. It's on your screen, 520-351-4900. CBS News law enforcement contributor Rodney Harrison joins me now. He's also the former Suffolk County, New York Police Commissioner. Thank you, Rodney, for being with us on this really tragic story. I mean, there's been a lot said about ransom notes. Someone was arrested for an imposter note. We're going to get some more information on that in a minute. But how would law enforcement identify what to take seriously and what's bogus?
Well, it's kind of hard to see exactly what's involved in the ransom note. I guess you could go based upon some of the demands. But I think the most important thing going forward is trying to identify what the motive is. Once you identify what the motive is, then you could be able to get a person of interest. And there are three things that are going to help this investigation going forward outside of the ransom notes. And that's technology, that's science, and that's the human component. And just take technology and the recovering of video cameras, video coverage, some types of license plate readers, cell sites, going through cell phones and people's laptops is going to be one investigative step. The second one is going to be science, being the DNA. Was any DNA recovered? Any latent prints recovered? And the third thing that needs to be done here is the human component, which is I like that they put a Crime Stoppers reward for $50,000, but they also need to be able to debrief individuals and cultivate some type of confidential informant or cooperator that be willing to come forward and give some information. So a lot of work needs to be done, but the ransom notes seem to be a little not validated as of yet, but I'm sure as the investigation goes forward, they'll be able to determine what steps need to be done to bring Ms. Guthrie home.
So when you say heart, do you mean somebody who may know the perpetrator and may have some information to try and appeal to them? And also, that said, we've got a deadline coming up. I mean, what happens if that deadline comes and goes? Is it a risk to wait for the proof of life that the Guthrie family asked for?
Yeah, and once again, as the investigators, the FBI, and as well as the Pima County Sheriff's Office, they haven't been so forthcoming regarding the ransom note, so it's hard to kind of speculate exactly what the demands were. I know there was something about money, maybe some cryptocurrency was requested. I know there's a deadline for 5 o'clock today as well as on Monday. So it's hard to sit here and say how much of a concern is involved with these ransom notes. I'm sure that they're taking every single bit of information and evidence that comes into their possession very, very seriously. But let's see what happens with the next investigative steps. But one of the most important things is trying to get down to what the motive is. And once you get the motive, you'll find that person of interest.
Rodney Harrison, thank you.
I want to bring in Michael Alcazar, the adjunct professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice and a former NYPD hostage negotiator. Michael, thank you for being with us. This is really the first time we heard directly from the Guthries. What was the strategy in releasing that message sent directly to the kidnappers? What do you make of that video?
So I'm sure they already employed the help of negotiators. I'm sure they helped create that statement. If you listen to the statement, it's very carefully worded. It sounds like they made it sound like the family is willing to cooperate. They stress that this woman, the victim, is very important to them and that she has medical needs. So it sounds to me like that was help with a negotiator. So if there is a ransom note that they're vetting, they want to make sure that they know that they're willing to cooperate and they're open to communication.
Now, the sheriff said today that the ransom note included a 5 p.m. deadline for today. In a case like this, would you recommend that the Guthries comply with the demands or reply with something by the deadline? Does that help?
Yeah, anything you can do to kind of like appease the potential abductors is good, because the main thing is that we want to keep the victim alive, that we make sure that she's safe. So anything that we can stretch the time, perhaps give them hope that we're willing to cooperate is key. If there is, in fact, a ransom note that's been vetted, that we have abductors that we can speak with.
Would that transaction, though, would that help authorities go to the suspects? Would that help with tracking them down?
Well, it depends how they communicate, right? Right now, I didn't even hear how the ransom note got delivered. Was it electronic? Was it by mail? So there's a lot of evidence that they could process electronically, forensically, if it was a hard copy, if the phone call if there was a phone call. See, they're not really releasing a lot of information, right? So we don't know how they got this ransom. So there's a lot of moving parts that they have to investigate. So anything that can buy investigators time would be helpful and hopefully saving this poor woman.
Now, we know that the ransom note in question, the one that they believe could be legitimate, went to the local CBS station. It was sent via email. Would that make it easier to track down the suspect, given that that's how they deliver the message?
Yeah, they're gonna look at that electronically. They have, I'm sure the FBI has like some kind of a computer crime squad that can vet the metadata, where that information is coming from, how it was delivered. Perhaps they can track the source. So I'm sure that's what they're doing right now. So that would be very helpful.
And once you do make contact with the kidnapper or kidnappers, how does that conversation go? What are the first questions you ask? I'm assuming you have to establish some level of trust, right?
Absolutely. We want to make sure that the victim is safe. We want some kind of proof of life. We want to know what they want and how they want us to help facilitate if there's going to be an exchange. So we want to make them feel comfortable. We want to make sure that they know that the safety of this victim is our priority. And we're willing to have a conversation and keep them talking.
This story has dominated the headlines, mostly because this is Savannah Guthrie's mother. She's a very popular morning show host. I'm curious if the fact that she's such a high-profile celebrity, if that would play into the negotiations.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if the abductors, if this was perhaps actually a targeted kidnapping, I mean, there's a couple of different thoughts that this might have been accidental. This could have been a burglary gone bad. But if it is perhaps like a targeted abduction, they know exactly who they kidnapped. They know exactly what they're dealing with. And I'm sure there's some kind of monetary amount that they're desiring. So yes, absolutely. They're going to have to be careful with it. A lot of negotiators are going to have to work hard on this. And at the same time, in the background, they're processing the crime scene and hopefully processing all the evidence to help identify who the abductors are.
Michael Alcazar, thank you so much, sir, for your time.
You're very welcome.
All right, I want to go ahead and bring in retired LAPD Police Sergeant Marlon Marrache, who recently retired after 24 years as a sergeant with the LAPD. I want to talk to you about the pressure that authorities are under given that deadline tonight.
A lot of pressure. Time is of the essence. And from watching in this press conference, you really can see how heartbreaking this whole situation is. And we're going to see about this ransom note at 5 p.m., what the next steps are. But just know that from a law enforcement perspective, all hands are on deck. The FBI is involved. So you need as many resources as possible to be able to continue to canvass the area and do as much investigation that you can.
So it looks like authorities also are zeroing in on this time frame between 1:47 a.m. early Sunday morning and 2:28 a.m. This is when there was that doorbell camera that was disconnected. Activity was noticed on other cameras. How are they going to hone in on that window of time and find out exactly what happened in those minutes?
Very good question. What I would say, it's like your colleague was mentioning about a forced entry. It seems as though it might be someone that doesn't know Nancy in particular. However, if it was unforced entry, then it's someone that you probably knows. But in these type of cases, these investigations, whenever there's critical missings, it seems as though that sometimes they have worked up the location before. In other words, there has been some focus, considering, living in this house that's out in the desert area. There's probably been some work up prior to making this unfortunate tragic incident happen.